Imagine the idea of trust, but not the kind we often associate with effort or willpower trust that comes from within, deep and natural, like the quiet trust that a river has in its journey to the sea. It knows the path and has no need to rush or struggle. It simply flows, shaping its course around rocks, banks, and valleys, weaving through obstacles with a calm, natural grace. This is the essence of trusting the flow of life, something that at first might feel foreign to us. After all, aren't we told that control and effort are the foundations of achievement? But perhaps, as Watts suggested, there's another, deeper way. When we let go of the need to control each outcome and every step we take, we begin to find a rhythm that's more harmonious, one that doesn't require us to constantly push, strive, or manipulate circumstances to align with our desires. Think about how much energy we often pour into forcing things to happen on our own timeline. How exhausting it can feel to try to arrange every detail, just so, hoping that we'll eventually find happiness or satisfaction at the end of it all. But what if the peace, the joy, and the satisfaction we're looking for aren't waiting at the end of this chase? What if they're here now, quietly available, ready to be experienced when we release the struggle? Imagine for a moment the idea of swimming with a river's current instead of against it. Picture yourself in the water, gently propelled forward, without resistance, the natural force of the water guiding you along. There's no struggle, no exhaustion, only a quiet awareness of each moment as it arrives. This is the kind of trust Watts spoke of, an inner belief that life's flow has its own wisdom. When we're open to moving with life instead of controlling it, we find that events, experiences, and even people come to us at the right time, often in unexpected ways. This way of living, though simple, requires a kind of bravery, the courage to release control and be vulnerable to whatever life brings. It's easy to grasp tightly, to make plans and cling to them, to feel a sense of safety in believing that we know what's coming next. But when we're willing to let go of this illusion of control, we allow ourselves to be surprised, to encounter life in all its fullness. And in those moments of openness, we experience something rare and profound moments when life seems to align, as if by magic, when the right things come to us effortlessly. This is not coincidence or mere luck, it's a natural alignment with life's own flow. When we trust, truly trust in life, we are not waiting passively for things to fall into place. Trusting the flow means showing up fully in each moment, participating wholeheartedly without the need to steer or manipulate. In this state, we're more receptive to opportunities, more attuned to the subtle messages and nudges life offers us. We learn to listen, to observe, and to respond with a kind of clarity that only arises when we're free from the burden of constant control. It's not that we don't have goals or dreams, it's that we approach them with a different energy, one of openness and readiness rather than anxiety or desperation. Letting go of control doesn't mean letting go of intention or direction. It means letting go of the need for certainty, the compulsion to predict every turn. Watts often spoke of life as a dance, where each step is part of a greater rhythm that we may not fully understand, but can trust in. Think of this dance as a way to move through life with ease, not because every step is planned, but because we're willing to improvise, to let the music guide us. And just as a dancer trusts a rhythm, we can trust life's rhythm, knowing that it has a way of guiding us if we allow it. Trust in life isn't built on guarantees. It's a choice we make moment by moment. And the beauty of this choice is that it frees us. We're no longer weighed down by worry, no longer preoccupied with what could go wrong or whether things will unfold as we wish. Instead, we're liberated to experience each moment as it is, to see the beauty in what's right in front of us without needing it to be different. It's this freedom that brings a quiet joy, a deep sense of peace that isn't dependent on circumstances. This is the joy of trusting the flow of life, of knowing that no matter where we are in the journey, we are exactly where we're meant to be. As we live this way, we begin to see that the challenges, obstacles, and even the disappointments we face are all part of the river's flow. They shape us, refine us, teach us lessons we might not otherwise learn. In trusting the flow, we understand that every experience, pleasant or painful, contributes to our growth. And when we trust that life's current knows the way, we find ourselves open to change, resilient in the face of uncertainty, and ultimately at peace with whatever comes. So let us approach life with this kind of trust, not as something to conquer or control, but as a journey to be experienced moment by moment. In releasing our grip, we gain so much more a life lived fully, deeply, and harmoniously with the flow of existence itself. Imagine for a moment the natural world around us. Think about how trees grow, how rivers flow, how birds migrate. Nothing in nature is forced. The tree doesn't strain to grow, it simply does so, moving toward the light, absorbing nutrients, its branches expanding naturally over time. And yet the tree's growth is steady, reliable, even inevitable. It doesn't fight against the sun, nor does it resist the changing seasons. In fact, it adapts, swaying with the wind, shedding leaves when the time is right, and flourishing again when conditions allow. This is a beautiful metaphor for letting life come to us without the constant urge to chase, pursue, or force outcomes. It's about aligning ourselves with the natural rhythm of things, just as every part of nature seems to do so gracefully. When we reflect on this, we see that life has a way of bringing us what we need at the right time. However, the idea of non-chasing doesn't mean we abandon our dreams or sit idly waiting for everything to fall into place. It's more about approaching our lives, our relationships, and our goals from a place of calm confidence and openness, rather than one of impatience or desperation. Think about the last time you wanted something so badly that every thought, every plan seemed to revolve around making it happen. There's a certain tension in that kind of pursuit, isn't there? A feeling that if we don't keep pushing, we might miss out. But often this constant push is what ends up holding us back as we become so focused on the end result that we miss the opportunities and lessons in front of us. Consider the act of planting a seed. After you place it in the soil, you can't rush its growth. You can water it, give it sunlight, and make sure it has the right conditions, but you can't demand that it grows faster. You simply trust that over time it will sprout and grow in its own way, at its own pace. Similarly, when we nurture our dreams and desires, we can give them our attention, create the right conditions for their growth, and then step back, trusting that they will unfold as they are meant to. It's a kind of active patience, where we are involved in the process without forcing the outcome. It's this balance between action and non-action, between intention and surrender, that allows us to experience life fully without the need to control every detail. In letting go of the chase, we also make room for life to surprise us. Sometimes the very things we're searching for come to us in unexpected ways when we release the need to control. Perhaps you've experienced this in your own life. Maybe you met someone special, not through a dating app or a plan set up, but by a chance encounter. Or you landed an opportunity you hadn't been seeking, but which turned out to be exactly what you needed. When we let go, life often brings us what we need in ways we couldn't have planned or predicted. And this isn't a passive state, it's an engaged, alert way of being, where we remain open and receptive to whatever life presents, trusting that, just like nature, there's a rhythm and timing that's beyond our full understanding. The challenge, of course, is our own mind. We're wired to think about the future, to plan, to worry, and to want assurances. But real freedom comes when we can quiet that part of ourselves, even just for a moment, and allow things to happen naturally. Imagine if instead of worrying about how things will unfold, we focused on bringing our full presence to each moment. If we can bring this kind of presence to our lives, we'll find that the need to chase fades away. We begin to trust that what is meant for us won't pass us by, and that what isn't meant for us will make way for something that is. Letting go of the chase also brings us closer to our true selves. Often in our efforts to pursue or acquire, we end up moving further away from who we really are. We lose ourselves in the roles we think we should play, in the accomplishments we think will bring us validation or acceptance. But when we let go of these pursuits, we're left with a simpler, more genuine version of ourselves. We're no longer acting or chasing to fit a mold, we're simply being, in the most authentic sense. And in this state of being, we connect more deeply with ourselves and with others. We find that the relationships and experiences that come to us are more aligned, more meaningful, because they're not shaped by a need to impress or achieve. This is the essence of living in flow, allowing life to come to us without pushing it away or pulling it closer. When we embrace this way of being, we find that life has a way of arranging itself, often in ways more beautiful than we could have planned. It's as if the universe has a blueprint we cannot see, a way of aligning events, encounters, and opportunities when we step out of the way. This doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing, but that we take inspired actions rather than frantic ones, that we move from a place of alignment rather than force. To live this way is to embrace uncertainty with a kind of joyful curiosity. Instead of dreading what might come next or trying to control it, we learn to approach life as an unfolding story, one we're excited to see, but not desperate to dictate. And in doing so, we find a kind of peace, a contentment that is rooted in the present moment. We're no longer anxiously looking forward or back, but fully engaged with what is here and now. So the next time you feel the urge to chase after something, a goal, a person, or an outcome, pause and ask yourself if there's another way. Ask yourself if you can hold your intention lightly, with the understanding that life's timing may not be yours, but that it's ultimately for the best. In doing so, you free yourself from the need to rush, to push, to pull, and instead you open yourself to the profound beauty of simply allowing life to come to you. When we look at life through a lens of non-attachment, it might seem as if we're being asked to stop caring altogether, to lose our drive, to become indifferent. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Non-attachment is not about losing our passion or our motivation. It's about approaching life in a way that allows us to experience joy, satisfaction, and contentment without clinging so tightly to specific outcomes. It's the art of caring deeply without depending on things to go a certain way. In essence, non-attachment is learning how to hold our desires, dreams, and relationships with an open hand rather than a tight grip. Consider the analogy of holding sand in your hand. When you cup it loosely, the grains rest comfortably, held safely. But the tighter you squeeze, the more sand slips through your fingers, until eventually you're left with very little. This is exactly what happens when we try to control every detail of our lives. When we hold too tightly, we end up losing the very essence of what we seek. The joy is drained, the spontaneity is lost, and we're left with a sense of frustration, wondering why our efforts don't yield the peace or happiness we expected. But when we loosen our grip, when we give ourselves the freedom to experience without demanding a specific outcome, that's when life seems to offer its most fulfilling moments. Non-attachment, therefore, invites us to see our experiences, our relationships, and even our challenges with a bit of distance, not an emotional coldness, but rather a kind of gentle perspective. It's recognizing that no single outcome, no single achievement, no single person is responsible for our happiness. Our sense of fulfillment comes from within, from our own willingness to be fully present, regardless of what happens. And this state of presence, free from the fear of loss or the pressure to achieve, is where we find true peace. One of the most transformative aspects of non-attachment is the way it allows us to love without condition. Often when we care deeply about someone, we might find ourselves becoming possessive or fearful of losing them. We cling tightly, worrying about every little detail, every interaction, every potential change. But the beauty of non-attachment is that it frees us to love more deeply, to truly appreciate the other person, not as a possession or a need, but as an individual in their own right. When we love in this way, we aren't trying to control or change them. We're simply grateful for who they are, for however long they're a part of our lives. We recognize that relationships, like everything in life, are fluid. People grow, change, and sometimes move on, and that's okay. Non-attachment teaches us that our love and happiness don't need to depend on keeping things exactly as they are. We're open to change, to growth, and to the natural evolution of our connections. Another beautiful aspect of non-attachment is how it transforms our relationship with success and failure. Many of us have been conditioned to think that our worth is directly tied to what we achieve. We set goals, we make plans, and we work tirelessly, thinking that once we reach a certain milestone, then we'll be happy, then we'll feel complete. But what happens when we attach all our happiness to a goal that keeps shifting? The closer we get, the further it seems to move away, leaving us constantly in a state of striving. Non-attachment invites us to see success differently. It reminds us that the journey itself, the effort, the growth, the experience, is where our fulfillment lies. The destination becomes less significant, and suddenly we're able to enjoy the process without constantly worrying about the end result. And this is where true contentment begins. We are free to give our best, to pursue our passions without tying our worth or happiness to any single outcome. It's also interesting to consider how non-attachment can shift our experience of challenges and setbacks. When we're too attached to a certain plan or vision, any deviation feels like failure, a source of stress or disappointment. But when we adopt a non-attached perspective, we start to see obstacles as part of the journey, not as interruptions. Each challenge, each unexpected turn, is simply another part of the experience, perhaps even offering us something better than what we initially planned. This perspective allows us to adapt more easily, to learn and grow from our challenges instead of feeling defeated by them. It's as if life becomes a river we're flowing with rather than a mountain we're struggling to climb. The setbacks aren't setbacks at all, they're just part of the natural rhythm, guiding us to where we're meant to be. One of the most profound realizations about non-attachment is that it brings us back to the present moment. So much of our anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction comes from living in the past or projecting ourselves into the future. We worry about what's to come, or we dwell on what has already happened, and in doing so, we miss what's right in front of us. Non-attachment brings us back to the here and now. It reminds us that this moment, this single moment, is the only one we truly have. And in fully embracing it, we discover a richness, a depth, a beauty that we might have overlooked. It's in this state of presence that we find a kind of quiet joy, a peace that doesn't rely on any external conditions. In the end, non-attachment isn't about detaching from life or from those we love. It's about detaching from the need to control every aspect, from the belief that we can only be happy when things are a certain way. It's about cultivating a trust in life, in ourselves, and in the natural flow of events. This doesn't mean we give up our dreams or our desires, but rather that we approach them with a sense of openness, a willingness to let them unfold as they will. We're still actively engaged, still caring, still passionate, but with an underlying freedom, a peace that comes from knowing we don't have to cling to any one outcome. Imagine if we could move through life with this kind of freedom, caring deeply, giving fully, but without the need to hold on so tightly. We would feel lighter, more peaceful, and more connected both to ourselves and to others. We would experience life's moments, its joys, its sorrows, and its surprises with a kind of graceful acceptance, knowing that each experience, each person, each success or failure is part of our journey, not its destination. Non-attachment then is not an absence of love, of ambition, or of care. It is simply the art of letting go, of allowing life to come and go as it will, while we remain centered, grounded, and at peace. And so as we go forward, let's embrace this idea not as a philosophy to be understood, but as a way of life to be lived. In learning to let go, we give ourselves the greatest gift of all, the ability to be truly present, truly free, and truly alive. Let's think about how much time we spend either worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. There's always this mental movement, pulling us forward to things that haven't happened yet, or pulling us back to things we can't change. And what we often miss in all that is the one place where our lives are actually happening, the present moment. AIAN Watts teaches that the future and the past are illusions that only exist in our minds, and to truly live, to really feel alive, we have to return to the present, to now. The present moment is where we feel most alive, yet our minds have this habit of wandering. It's almost as if we're trained to think that happiness or peace or fulfillment lies somewhere just out of reach. We imagine that once we get that next promotion, find the right relationship, or reach a certain goal, then we'll finally arrive. But life isn't something waiting for us in some distant future. It's unfolding now in each breath, each conversation, each moment of stillness. We live as if we're waiting for some big event to signal that it's time to be happy. But the truth is, if we're not finding contentment here, in the present, it's unlikely we'll find it anywhere else. Imagine living in such a way that you don't have to chase after happiness. Think of the peace that comes when you no longer feel like life is something you need to constantly be catching up with or running toward. Watts teaches us that the art of living well isn't about making life go a certain way, but about allowing ourselves to fully be here, embracing whatever is. That doesn't mean we stop having dreams or that we lose our motivation. It simply means that we stop postponing our peace, our joy, and our gratitude. Instead of looking forward to some moment when we'll finally feel fulfilled, we open our eyes to what's around us right now. One of the things Watts spoke about often was how our attachment to the future creates a constant, low-level anxiety that most of us are so accustomed to, we hardly even notice it. It's that feeling of always needing to figure things out, that subtle tension that keeps us in a cycle of wanting and striving. But here's the thing, when we let go of that habit of always focusing on what's next, we realize we're free to enjoy what's in front of us, free to be more present with the people we care about, free to explore our lives with a sense of wonder and curiosity rather than pressure or expectation. There's a powerful shift that happens when we stop seeing life as a race to be won, or a checklist to be completed. Suddenly we're not just waiting for happiness, we're experiencing it. And this doesn't mean every moment is filled with joy or that we'll never feel sadness or disappointment. But what it does mean is that our happiness isn't dependent on things being a certain way. We develop a kind of inner stability that allows us to navigate life's ups and downs without feeling like our peace is at stake. Many people talk about living in the present, but it's often a concept that seems out of reach because it sounds like something you do only in rare, peaceful moments. But the truth is you can be present in any situation, whether it's a quiet morning alone or a hectic day at work. Being present is simply about bringing awareness to what you're doing without letting your mind drift into thoughts of what you should be doing or where you should be going. When we do this, we find that even the most mundane moments can be rich and full of life. Think about how often we feel restless because we think we're supposed to be somewhere else, doing something else, achieving something else. But all of that is an illusion. Our minds create this sense of urgency and incompleteness because they're constantly looking toward the future. Watts reminds us that this restlessness is a distraction from the peace we could be experiencing right now in this moment. In fact, the more we practice just being here, just allowing ourselves to experience life as it is, the more we realize that we don't actually need to add anything to our lives to feel fulfilled. This isn't to say that we won't still have goals or desires, but it changes our relationship with them. Instead of feeling like our happiness depends on achieving those goals, we start to see them as things we're free to pursue without feeling like they define us. Our identity, our worth, our peace of mind, they're not tied to what we accomplish or what the future holds. We're simply here, living fully, no longer prisoners to a future that hasn't arrived. When we embrace this perspective, we begin to notice that life has its own natural rhythm. There are times when we'll be active, motivated, moving forward, and other times when we're more still, reflective, allowing things to settle. And instead of feeling like we need to control or resist these rhythms, we can learn to flow with them. This is where we find a deeper sense of fulfillment by trusting that we're exactly where we need to be, even if that place doesn't look like what we'd planned. In the end, this is the essence of Watts' teaching. Life is not something to be wrestled with, not something we need to mold or bend to our will. Life is to be experienced, embraced, enjoyed, and sometimes simply witnessed. We can set our intentions, make our plans, and work toward our dreams, but with the understanding that true peace and happiness are not things we chase. They are states of being that we return to, that we cultivate in the here and now. And as we open ourselves up to this way of living, we find a kind of joy that can't be taken away by circumstance or change. It's a joy rooted in our own awareness, our own willingness to be present, no matter what life brings. This is the gift of non-attachment, the freedom of letting go, and the beauty of truly living in the present. As we continue exploring this perspective of non-attachment and living in the present, let's consider the power of allowing life to unfold naturally without interference. This idea goes against much of what we're taught, where planning, achieving, and taking action are emphasized. AIAN WATTS suggests that our efforts to control life often create unnecessary tension and anxiety because they put us at odds with life's natural flow. Let's reflect on how many times we've been told to make things happen, or to go out and get what we want. It's ingrained in us to be proactive, to ensure that every step leads directly to our goals. And while ambition and effort have their place, it's the need for absolute control that often leads us to unnecessary stress and disappointment. We imagine that if we're not actively steering, we might lose our way. But Watts invites us to a different approach, to see that sometimes the most profound outcomes arise not from grasping, but from letting go. Think about the times in life when things seem to fall perfectly into place without much effort. Perhaps a meaningful friendship began by chance, or a job opportunity arose when you least expected it. In those moments, we often feel a sense of harmony, as if life itself aligned with our intentions. This is what happens when we step back and allow life to flow naturally. Watts reminds us that life has an intelligence of its own, and sometimes the best outcomes come when we trust in that intelligence rather than trying to force a specific result. Living this way doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent. It means we become receptive, open to possibilities that we might overlook if we were too fixated on one outcome. Imagine walking through a forest. If you're solely focused on reaching a specific destination, you might miss the beauty along the way, the sunlight filtering through the trees, the sounds of birds, the subtle rustling of leaves. But if you walk with a sense of curiosity and openness, allowing yourself to take in everything around you, you will find that the journey itself is full of richness and beauty. In our lives, we're often so focused on reaching certain milestones or achieving specific goals that we overlook the beauty and wisdom of the present moment. When we release this tight grip on outcomes, we find a kind of freedom. Suddenly, life feels less like a race and more like an experience to be enjoyed. This shift in perspective doesn't make us less motivated. In fact, it can make us more effective, because we're no longer weighed down by the constant need to control every aspect of our journey. There's a profound relief that comes from trusting that things will unfold as they need to. Imagine carrying a heavy weight, the weight of needing everything to go exactly as planned. Now imagine setting that weight down. When we release this burden of control, we find ourselves more present, more engaged, and more able to appreciate what's right in front of us. This is what Watts speaks to the peace that arises when we let go of needing life to fit our preconceptions. Watts often spoke about the concept of Wu Wei from Taoist philosophy, which translates to effortless action or action through inaction. This idea isn't about doing nothing, it's about aligning ourselves with the natural flow of things. It's about acting without force, allowing our actions to arise naturally from the moment. When we live this way, our actions feel harmonious and meaningful rather than forced or artificial. Think about how this applies to our relationships. Many of us have experienced times when we tried too hard to make a relationship work, to mold it to our expectations. And often, the harder we try, the more strain we create. But when we approach relationships with an open heart and a willingness to let things develop naturally, we create space for a deeper, more authentic connection. We're not trying to shape or control the other person, we're simply present, allowing the relationship to grow in its own way. This idea of letting go applies not just to relationships, but to all areas of life. When we release our tight grip on how things should be, we find that life often surprises us in beautiful and unexpected ways. Opportunities arise that we never could have planned. Experiences unfold that enrich us in ways we hadn't imagined. This is the gift of trusting life, of allowing it to be what it is, rather than trying to bend it to our will.